Welcome to At Home is Now. My name is Wanaka Oberhuber and I'm your host. My guest today is Richard Spegal. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I'm so happy you found the time, and I'd love to hear what you're most excited about at this time in your life and how it contributes to your joy and happiness.
I'd say most exciting is now that I've been medically retired from the military, I actually get to be at home with my family instead of being far away all the time.
Yeah, other than that, maybe more.
Um, well, it gives me more time to do stuff like writing and really get involved in the different fantasy worlds and stuff like that. It lets me do things like this, which are a lot of fun. It's not the kind of thing I was able to do up until recently.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Maybe let's go into your writing. So, what inspired you to write in the first place? And then, how did that develop? And what are the many steps it took for you to become a writer and a published writer, I assume?
I'd say it all started. I've been writing since high school, and it started becoming a big deal for me when I ran out of stuff to read. There wasn't a lot available in the genres that I enjoy, at least not things that are geared towards adults. So I just started writing myself. It was a hobby for a long time, and then in 2022, my unit got deployed to Egypt, and I'm going to be away from home for a long time. So I decided, let me give this a shot. So I started sending stuff to a publisher, and ever since then, I haven't been able to put the genie back in the bottle. I've been publishing things ever since. And like I said before, now that I'm out of the service altogether, I have a lot more time to devote to it, so I can do things around the books and just keep writing more.
It's beautiful. And when I read a little bit about what you say about yourself, you love to go into magic and mystery and into all these topics. So maybe you'd like to share what relevance it has in your life and how that connects to the stories that you are putting out there.
Well, the biggest thing for me is that I spend a lot of time in these different fake worlds, these fantasy worlds and fiction worlds. I spend more time in them and with those characters than I do in the real world a lot of times. And the biggest thing that I would say that separates my writing is that I go to a lot of dark places. As I said, my writing is geared towards a little bit more of a mature audience because it gets very psychological and deals and I don't shy away from it. I go into like the brutal details, no matter how bad or how dark things get. And I think that's something that's really lacking in today's entertainment.
Yeah. So you're willing to look at the deep and dark places within the human mind and experience, right? And actions as well.
Yes.
Does so perhaps that has a little bit to do with that. As in the military, you probably had to look at things that not everyone looks at normally. So maybe you're less fearful of that because of your experience in the military. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I say that does play a part. It also helps my experience in the military also helps me but be a lot more realistic with certain things like the kinds of equipment and weapon systems and stuff like that. So when I write action scenes, I'm able to be like really realistic and really detailed with it. And then a lot of my own mental health and behavioral health journey has allowed me a lot of insight from a victim's perspective of different psychological disorders. So when my characters suffer the same thing, I'm able to really spell it out in a way that a lot of people wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, I bet. So when you speak of going through this psychological journey, means you've had all kinds of topics come up in your life and you had to learn how to overcome them or to live with them, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in other words, your characters in the stories also go through all kinds of struggles and issues in their lives, and then they find ways to either accommodate those issues or change something, right?
Yes. I mean, no one's immune to stress, And in most entertainment, you've got like the good guys. For example, the good guys are going through everything with like a smile on their face, but that's not very realistic because like the more you fight, the more you struggle, the more stressed out you get, and the characters are not immune to that. And it gets pretty bad. Like you'll have like one of the characters who are supposed to be a protagonist will have a psychotic break because they simply can't handle what's going on anymore, and then other people have to help that person, and it just I go to all those places because it's just more realistic.
Right. Yeah, of course. The even the so-called good guys go through their crisis and their issues and are not always sure about being good in certain situations. They might
Yeah.
get murky there. And then at some point they need to reestablish their direction, right? So they might lose it for a time being or think they should let go of it for and then they don't. Whatever. It's a very complex journey, you're right. So I think that's a very beautiful thing to be able to write about and let people feel the feelings and go through the thoughts and the actions with the characters, right?
Yes, because as the audience, the reader always has more information than the characters do because they're able to read from like both sides and everything. And you'll see that like quite often when things get really bad, like the good guys, to put it simply, the good guys they'll still do positive things, but a lot of times they'll start doing them for the wrong reason because of that stress and stuff like that. Like their intentions are not always good anymore. They just keep trying.
Yeah, yeah. They may even have the wrong reasons for doing the right
Yeah,
thing, right?
exactly.
Which is quite a an interesting thing, right? Because sometimes you have the right reasons for doing something, but you're doing the wrong thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
There's ways.
yeah, we're very complex, we human beings. A lot to go into. So, when we think of this, there's these issues that people have with experiencing themselves as valuable, right? And in the Course in Miracles, we have this idea everyone is infinitely valuable in the mind of God. Now, how do you have thoughts like that in the background when you're writing, or what are the background to your stories?
Not as much in the Eternal Night series because that series is more modern day and going into science fiction. So certain things don't mesh as well. But in the fantasy series, Wolves and Ravens, since it's fantasy, I'm able to do the whole angels and demons and gods, stuff like that. And it actually makes sense to the story. And I am very careful about how I explore it because I don't want to offend anybody. And there's so many opinions out there and stuff like that. So I try to do my best to write it carefully so everybody can enjoy it, no matter what your belief system is. That was the most difficult part about writing that series.
Yeah, that does sound difficult to not offend anyone
Yeah,
with what you're putting out there. Of course, if you need to portray angels, it will be you will be portraying them in a particular way, and so you can't always live up to a certain way of seeing angels that one party or another might have, right? So
yeah.
you will make a new style of angels or the for the series, right?
Yes, I try to. I use a lot of words like that, but I try to write it in such a way that those aren't the words that the celestial beings use. Those are just the words that other people use. So hopefully, it can be interpreted however you want. But a lot of my angelic characters, they suffer the same things that the regular characters are suffering. I thought it turned out extremely well, but I could see how an individual might not enjoy the idea of an angel wanting to commit suicide, for example, because of how much they're suffering. But it was important to me to write it that way because I felt like it's more realistic to have them go through the same thought processes and the same struggles as like the lesser beings, so to speak.
Okay, so your angels have their own struggles as well and can also lose faith for a time and so on.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, I guess it's not so off the mark if you think of the way the Bible, if you're thinking of Christian angels in the Bible, you have the angels that have fallen. So yes, they're if that is possible, then there must be the option of having struggles too.
Yes, I don't want to spoil anything. I kind of have that same end result, but the angels get there a much different way. But just like one of the examples where we were talking about intentions, in the third book, Broken Angel, the main character, it's her show. She's an angel, and she never gives up, and she keeps fighting. But the audience knows she's only doing it because she wants to die. She's doing positive things and helping everybody to never give up. But the only reason she's fighting is because she doesn't want to be alive anymore. And that's an interesting concept, I think, for people to deal with when you're talking about that kind of character.
Yeah, that certainly is a conundrum with a lot of different things to think about when you think about that. Why are higher beings doing things, and how do they come to help everyone? Right? What would get them to do that? Yeah, I guess it's hard to say, right? Whether the concept, the idea that nothing ever really can die, right? Like the eternal soul or the eternal nature of who we are, and then this idea that there could be something as a permanent end of it, right? In this character you're speaking of.
Yes, because she's in all three books. If you look at the entire trilogy as a whole, she's probably the main protagonist of the entire trilogy. And she is unhappy from the very beginning, blames everybody else, never accepts consequences for her actions, and things just get worse and worse and worse. And in the third book, she's finally faced with that wall where she realizes that it's all been her fault. Like from the very beginning, literally everything bad that's happening has been because of her. And she has to try to deal with that after being told that there's nothing she can do. So the only reason she keeps fighting is because it's the only thing she knows how to do. And like I said before, she just wants it to be over. I mean, things kind of, I mean, everything ends up happily ever after eventually. I don't want to spoil anything, but it is a strange journey for her to go on.
Yeah, I guess that is a crisis that human beings go through too, right? This
Yeah.
realization, I'm responsible for everything that's going on in my life, and including all the consequences people have had through my actions and what I've done, right?
Yeah. And I think it's a nice way to look at things to imagine that angels have to go through the same struggles. I mean, it makes us think like, as bad as things might get, there's always a positive way out, and we're not the only ones who suffer for our actions and things like that. I mean, it's a universal concept.
Yeah, I think, and in the Course in Miracles, there's this idea that we are innocent, and we already are innocent as we are, and we need to remember that. So we need to remember that we are whole. So I don't know if there's any parallels to what you're speaking of, but there's certainly this idea that we are guilty, that and so on, and guilt and responsibility are not necessarily the same thing. And so this is
Yeah.
it's a big deal when you have a celestial being going through this struggle of feeling guilty, but maybe discovering a way out of it and realizing that nothing bad actually did happen. It may have felt that way, it may be that way, or she didn't, or she realized it really happened, but there is a way to come to terms with it. I don't know what the character's journey was, but it's a very, very, very universal topic for anyone living a life as a human being as well.
Yes, definitely, I agree.
So, what are your thoughts on this idea that of guilt and the idea of responsibility, and how that is something, either is something else, or do you see it as one?
I guess it depends on the situation. I believe in responsibility for everything that you do. As like the whole concept of always blaming others and things like that. I mean, there's always obstacles, but in the end, you're responsible. And when it comes to things like guilt, I understand how people feel that way, especially if you learn later that you made the wrong choice. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to feel some guilt, but you can't let yourself be consumed by it, because then you keep falling down the wrong path and you miss the opportunity to make the right decisions and kind of correct the problem.
Yeah, yeah. If you stick with guilt, you are you're right. Then you won't be capable of making a different decision this time. And so, yeah, in A Course in Miracles, it speaks of how you can choose again, right? So if you chose wrongly, you can choose again. And I think that's important to get to the place where you actually can choose again.
Yeah, the second book in that trilogy is actually called Choice. One of the overreaching concepts and themes of the entire trilogy is a big focus on choice, where you always have a choice. Everybody has a choice, and it's the primary reason why we're alive. It's what makes us alive, is the fact that we have choice. Well, we have the freedom to make the wrong choice, and bad things can happen, but that's part of having free will.
Yeah, you need to be able to make choices, otherwise it's not of value, right? And
Right.
if you, but at the same time, there's the idea that you, in the end, you can't make a really wrong choice because you will, redemption is available, right? So you can find atonement as another word for that, right?
Yeah, there's always another choice. There's always a way to come out on top if you can just, you remain calm, don't get consumed by guilt like we mentioned before, and intentions are very important, and I believe anyway, because that's the one thing you can control. Like, you can make a choice, but you can't control all the choices everybody else makes. So sometimes what you wanted, it just doesn't work. But if you at least had the right intentions, I think that's going a long way towards, at least still feeling good and proud of what you're doing, because at least you tried to do the right thing.
Yeah, I think intentions is a very important topic as well. Intentions is the foundation for being motivated, as you were mentioning. But then there's the other side of how do you fulfill those intentions, right? And that's where people get fighting, right? If both want to be loving, one may think you have to do this, and the other person may think they have to do that. And to discover that you have the same intention is probably a quite an amazing thing, and yet you're doing opposite things or very different things to believe you're fulfilling that intention.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so am I getting you right when these characters, they have intentions that they're following through with, and they can feel good about themselves because of having the intention that feels good to them, right?
Right.
And following up with actions that they believe are actually fulfilling that intention.
And that's what one of the things that makes that angelic character interesting is that everything she does, she has good intentions, but she doesn't. But you also have to consider the consequences before you make a choice. Everything she does is well intentioned, but because she doesn't think ahead, it's nothing but wrong choices, which causes all of the bad things that happen in the trilogy are basically because of her. But she always has the right intention. So it kind of like looks at it from almost the different from the different side, where intentions are important, but it's no excuse for not thinking ahead and at least using some common sense.
So, and there's another side to it. Intentions are one thing, and the other is your, I guess we could put it as your worldview or the way you see things. And in A Course in Miracles, for instance, it says you can't change the world, but you can change your mind about it, and
Yes.
that makes all the difference.
Yeah. And if enough people do that, then they can change the world.
Exactly. Yeah. That then the world you see is, even if it is something totally different because you've changed your mind about it. It's like every time we get angry about someone or something, right? And and then we suddenly get an insight, a different view of it. We may stop being angry. We may start become compassionate instead.
Right. I mean, it's human nature. There's nothing wrong about being angry about a person or a situation or something like that. Like I said, it's human nature, but like you're saying, you don't have to stay that way. And if you choose to stay that way, then that's not the person's fault or the situation's fault. That's your choice to stay that way rather than altering your view about it, like you mentioned. And then maybe you can even learn something from it. And then that helps you make even better choices going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, yes, it's a thing that we are used to, getting angry about things or other people or situations, but it's crucial to be able to change your mind about it, because otherwise you stay stuck there.
Right.
Yeah, that is really crucial. And I think stories like yours or other stories are capable of looking at that very deeply, and providing a safe space to actually look at it and think about, oh, maybe I could change my mind in this way or that way. These are options I have, even if you didn't see that beforehand.
Right. And in Eternal Nights, where the main characters are incredibly old vampires, and then with the main series, which I'll start publishing maybe next month, it's they're even older. Like at this point, you're dealing with characters who are 2,000 years old. They're supposed to be the good guys. They're not very nice people. And after being alive for that long, they're very set in their ways. They find it very difficult to change their perceptions about things. They just insist that I'm always right because I know better because I'm 2,000 years old. So when they find out that they're wrong, a lot of times they don't accept it. They won't change their worldview. They'll just keep um, beating their heads against the wall, so to speak.
Yeah, that's another issue that we have, right?
Yeah,
Not wanting to accept that we could be wrong.
yeah,
And in the book, and of course in Miracles, they have this idea: do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And you have to
I like
choose.
that. Yeah, I like that.
So I guess these old characters you're speaking of can't be happy because they're totally um, stuck in this idea that they have to be right.
Yeah, it makes it difficult for them to because they're at the end of Origins. Where they find out what they are, they find out what's happening. They basically decide that okay, we're going to fight against this. We're going to protect the human race. Then the main series takes place 1,200 years in the future. Their priorities have changed. They don't really care anymore. They're going to try, but all they care about is their own family. They don't really care about humans anymore, and it makes for very difficult protagonists when the audience sees all these negative intentions they have for what they're doing. And then there's all those sayings like persistence, being hardworking, and stuff like that. We see that stuff as being positive, but all of those statements have a negative side. I mean, is working really hard a good thing if you're working on the wrong task? Or if you're persistently beating your head against the wall because you're wrong, persistence isn't really a good thing in that case. So we explore all of that, like in those characters' lives.
Yeah, that's a good point, because like you said, there is a different way of seeing that. Yeah, you don't have to. Persistence isn't always valuable. And there are things where it is valuable, but there's others where it's not. I would say you're being able to get your books published and writing them and so on. That had a lot of persistence in it, right? So that in this case, you probably would describe it as something very positive and very helpful.
Yes. Now, I would, even if I couldn't, I would write for the rest of my life just for me. I love it. I enjoy these worlds that I create, and I'm just going to keep writing. The fact that I'm getting them published, that's some nice icing on the cake. But even if I wasn't, I would still just do it. Yeah, because I just love it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because there's some people like I remember I was posting on Facebook and posting these things I wrote and so on. And then there was people like, "Oh, you're so into yourself. Why are you sharing it all over the place and this and that?" Like, I have the same idea as you just described. Well, I just this is part of who I am, right? I do
Yeah,
these things. Like I'm podcasting. Okay, this is another way of putting stories and getting people to be heard and so on, right? There's all these things that I do. Yeah, I'm doing it. Of course, it's an icing when you get recognition for it on it, but it's something you do because it's important to you, and not because you absolutely are a how do you attention monger or whatever you want to call it, right?
yeah. I actually that whole side of it is actually very different, very difficult for me. Um, at least in the beginning, like the writing part, that's easy. But then when I get asked to like, okay, you're going to do a book signing at this place, or you're going to go to this interview, or whatever. In the beginning, it's just like I don't want to do any of that. I just want to keep writing. It's like, well, you have to do that. So it's like, okay, I'll do it. It ended up being a lot more fun than I thought. Like doing podcasts and stuff like that, it's very enjoyable. Um, but in the beginning, I wasn't really looking to do things like that. I just wanted to keep writing.
Yeah, that's an issue for me as well when it comes to writing. I don't I don't want to think about the rest, but
Yeah.
it's of course it's part of it, and
Well,
I don't know.
the entire entertainment industry is broken, and that includes the literary side of it too. And the more time I spend thinking about the industry as a whole, the angrier I get because of how stupid it is. So I don't want to be on that side of the fence. I just want to be on the side where I get to keep writing, and that's really kind of all I care about.
Yeah, and that's of course hard to be able to live that, right? So,
Yeah,
like you said, if you want to get people to notice what you're doing, you do need to do some more things.
I've
Yeah.
got I have a different company that's turning some of the books into screenplays. And as part of that, we did a bunch of rounds of market research. And I wasn't sure how that stuff was going to come back, but every round of market research came back. I scored 92%. All three rounds, 92%. And they're like, that never happens to get that high. And now we're bringing these results to people and they don't want to look at it. It's like we have documentation that 92% of the world wants to see this. No, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to remake Batman for the 12th time and see how that goes instead. I mean, it's just that whole industry is just a mess right now.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of habits there, right?
Yeah,
Let's take what we know and continue with that.
yeah, they
And
don't care how much money they lose. They just keep doing it.
yeah, so it's somewhat like the characters you were describing, right? These old vampires
Yeah,
who are not willing to change anything in their ways or the way they see things.
yeah,
And yeah, I guess that is a type of satire on the issue of how reluctant one whole industries, but also whole
yeah.
societies, whole groups of people are to change their mind about the world.
Unintentional satire, but satire nonetheless.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's part of the writing that you discover things about it that you didn't know before, right?
Yeah, you get that. I think all creators get that. Like I'll get questions about certain things, like people want to know the deeper meaning behind this or that, and I don't have an answer. It's like, well, there wasn't any. It sounded good, so I wrote it down. I mean, it's like I have to come up with these answers that I'm inventing just so I have something to say to the question. When in reality, I don't know. Like these things are in my head all the time, and I just write them down. That's the deeper meaning.
Yeah, I think that's also an important aspect of it. I remember how psychologists they like to analyze the artworks that people are doing, right?
Yeah,
And as an artist, the artist doesn't think about that usually, right? they're creating this, and they wouldn't want it to be analyzed that way either,
Yeah,
because they were thinking totally differently about it. It's a
especially
creative process, right, and not a psychological process.
especially the crazy ones like me. I mean, most artists that we revere these days were not normal people. They suffered from one ailment or another, which allowed them to see or hear things differently, and they just put it down on like a blank canvas or a block of marble or a blank page to allow other people to see it too. But you ask us like what kind of deeper meaning or what parallels to society and things like that, and it's like I don't know. This crap's in my head, and I got to put it down because I got to get out of my head. So, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a dilemma that many creatives have, right, with the way it's received.
yes,
So, yeah, because especially if you're going to write something where you want to get a certain message about society out there, it probably will block your flow, right?
yeah,
And because you will, because if you're always thinking about what does it mean and how will it be received and what will people think of this and how does it have any relevance to what's going on, you you might get in your own way, right? So I think for some many creatives, they want to put that aside while they're doing it.
what you just said accurately depicts why the entertainment industry is failing because that's exactly what people do, but they shouldn't do that. Like, I'm creating this world. This world has nothing to do with our world. The characters don't know you're there, so they cannot act or speak to placate you. They're acting and speaking based on their own thoughts and desires. And that's why, and when you write like that and you actually don't think about the audience, you end up creating something that's a lot more realistic, and the audience loves it because it's real and it's completely immersive. They're not mouthpieces for society.
Yeah, and I think one also gets tired of writing if one's trying to make characters mouthpieces of society.
Yeah, that
But it's probably a way to get bored with writing.
that happens a lot these days, where the only people who understand what the heck is going on are the creators because they created something that only makes sense to them, or they created characters that will mouthpieces to their worldviews and their opinions, and the rest of the audience, like, we don't care what that person thinks. We want to see a real story, but the characters aren't being real people. Or you'll have an intelligent character, but they'll do something stupid on purpose to fit with the plot because people write the plot and then they throw the characters into it secondhand. But the characters are supposed to be what drives the plot. The characters tell the story, not you.
Yeah, I think that's a very important subject as well, not just in writing, but in any way of receiving information or whatever. If people, have this feeling that a being from somewhere else is speaking through them, right? They also have to let go of this preconceived idea of who that might be, because you don't know, right?
Right.
Until you hear it, until the character or the source tells you, right?
Exactly.
And it's like, to think that you would know in advance what's going to be happening or what's going to be said would mean that it's not pristine. It's not what's coming through now. It would be like premeditated.
Exactly. People ask me like, do you outline your books before you start writing? Because I guess that's supposed to be a normal thing. I don't. I just write. Because if I outline my books, then I'm telling the story, and I want the characters to tell the story. And every book I've ever written has gone completely different from how I expected it to go. So I don't bother outlining anymore. I just let the characters do stuff, and then the story happens. It's a lot more realistic that way. It's a lot more immersive that way because people can believe what's happening.
Yeah, and the other thing is you have the benefit that it's a surprise to you as well.
Yes. I mean, it
So
obviously,
you're
I mean, yeah, I came up with it obviously because if I didn't come up with it, the story wouldn't exist. But it comes from somewhere in my brain that I don't fully control, and because I'm nuts. so, so my conscious mind, when I'm writing, it's always a surprise. It's very exciting.
Yeah, and I think that keeps you going also,
Yeah.
which is very important.
No matter how much I put down on paper, there's always more stuff to fill in the blanks. Or because I've got 5 books published now, but I've got another 5 that are waiting in line, and there's dozens more I still need to write. So like I can't really stop. I've tried to stop in the past and it doesn't work. I can't stop.
Yeah, and that's surprising to some people, I guess. But it's a great thing that you are aware of it, right? And so you know to continue, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because yeah, if you've tried to stop and realize that doesn't work, then you know it's something you need to do, right?
Yeah.
Whether you understand the reasons for it or not is another matter.
Yeah. It makes it a little difficult to live in the real world sometimes. It's one of the struggles that I have to go through. But it's good for writing, just bad for the real world.
Yeah, I can understand what you mean. You get so immersed into it that it's all you're thinking about. So you
Yeah.
forget about the tasks or the things at hand in your life, at least for the time being, right?
Yes.
Until it actually becomes necessary to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it can be annoying to people living with you at times, but it's
Yeah. It's a lot of times I know it's a lot. It's difficult for my wife a lot of times. The way I am with this stuff and like how little control I have over certain things. But she does her best and she's very helpful to me. She keeps me alive.
yeah, and that's really important as well, right? Otherwise, you couldn't get it out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need you need everyone needs support, right?
Yeah. I imagine that if I was like just a single guy living in an apartment, I don't know how I would make it without somebody looking out for me in the real world. I'd be stuck. I'd be stuck in this stuff like 24/7. Somebody would probably just find my body one day. So I am very thankful to have a family that can support me and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really important because we do know the stories of people who get so immersed into video games or other things that they don't take care of themselves.
Yeah.
So there are a whole lot of stories like that. On the other hand, I think writing is different though. Because you're actually actively bringing something forth. It's not the. I don't think it can be compared completely. Just the fact of getting immersed into something and not being dealing with things is similar. Otherwise, not.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that it's a more productive compared to some of those other things, but it's just as unhealthy to the individual doing it. Um, whatever the outlet that they're using, it's still suffering and difficult for that person. It's just at least with writing, you're putting something out into the world that hopefully other people can enjoy.
Yeah, that's certainly a benefit when that is the case, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So another maybe let's go into the deeper workings of this. Like you said, you don't know where it comes from, but do you have a sense of what it feels like when it's happening?
Yes. I'm a manic, so a lot of times this like these different worlds and these characters they drive my mania. So I'll be like pacing around the room or pacing around the house for hours or days or whatever as all this stuff is playing out in my mind. Um, which is actually like that's one of the reasons I'm not in the military anymore because I can't make it stop. So I mean, I know it comes from somewhere in my head, just a place that I can't control, especially when I have a new idea. When I have a new idea, I'm basically just screwed for like 72 hours. There's nothing I can do. It's just, it overwhelms me. I can't stop until, I need a couple of days for it to calm down and get put on like the back burner or whatever. Like right now, I'm driven nuts by things that even if I write them right now, the audience won't read them for like another 7 years because of how far down the storyline my brain is. and the publisher won't let me publish all the books at once. They said that's bad business. So whatever.
Yeah, I guess they want to keep the material coming and not.
Yeah, they want
Yeah,
time in between to do their promotions and stuff and to drive up hype for the next book. And if I have them publish 5 at once, they're like, yeah, we can't market them properly. Okay.
yeah,
I don't really care about that side of things. I just do what I'm told.
yeah. I guess you don't have much of a choice when it comes to that,
Yeah.
right? If you want them to publish it, otherwise you'd have to change publishers or to self-publish, which has
Yeah.
its own issues as well. So yeah,
Especially if you're somebody, if you're somebody who's really good with distribution and marketing and you're really personable, you understand social media, you can self-publish and you can do the whole other half all on your own. I don't know how to do any of that stuff, and I don't want to do any of that stuff, most of it. So self-publishing for me would be terrible because nobody would ever know about them.
right, right. Yeah, so there's always ways that work and ways that don't work for you, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so it's very important to listen to that. Yeah, very exciting. So in other words, it feels overwhelming when you get these ideas. Then you get so immersed into them that you're thinking about them all the time, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then it takes, if I understand correctly, it takes like 3 days for it to simmer down. And then do you write it while you're in that state, or do you write it afterwards?
Usually afterwards. And a lot of times I try to keep myself from writing for long periods of time because when I'm actively writing, like the whole world kind of just goes away. And you can't do that all the time because you still have to do, like, I've got a family and stuff like that. So I read somewhere that the average professional author takes from 12 to 14 months to go from an idea to a finished manuscript. And I can finish a book in 5 weeks. In 5 weeks, I can do a 150,000 word manuscript, completely edited, ready to go. So I take enormous breaks in between so I'm not totally separated from the real world. And then it gets confusing sometimes because I have to remind myself of what book I'm talking about. Because, like, if I'm doing an interview for like the Wolves and Ravens trilogy, but in my head, I'm working on the 9th book for Eternal Nights, I have to like stop and remember what the interviewer is even talking about. Because it's like, what are you talking about? Oh, yeah, that's right. I wrote that book a year ago. It's weird sometimes.
Yeah, I can imagine because you're somewhere totally different at this moment, right?
Yeah. And it's worse with Eternal Nights because that same series is going on. So people will ask me questions about the characters, and I'm giving them answers that don't make sense because they didn't happen for another 4 books. So it's hard sometimes to focus on the right thing.
Yeah, I can understand that because there's so much to it, and yours somewhere else than the audience is with the books, right? They can
Yeah,
only know what they've read so far.
exactly.
They can't know anything else, and they may only need to know about the next book that's going to be published
Yeah,
shortly, and not about the 10 books further on. Yeah,
exactly.
but on the other hand, your mind is holding all of that at the same time. So
Yeah,
you have it all there. So it's more an idea of what is relevant at this moment and how to access that when you need it, right?
yeah. And being able to hold all of it in your head at the same time has benefits because a lot of times in long book series, one of the biggest issues is continuity. Like
Yep.
if you read the books carefully, you'll see mistakes all over them. But when you have it all in your head at the same time, you can make sure you don't make those mistakes because in your head it's already written. So when I was doing Wolves and Ravens, I was writing the 3rd book before any of them were published, and I had like some extra, I had some like great ideas to add to the third book, but for them to make sense, I had to make alterations to the other two. But I could do that because none of them were published yet. They were all just in my head at the same time. So I was able to rewrite everything to make it all make sense.
Yeah, that is a good thing about not publishing right away,
Yeah.
I guess. If we want to see something positive about it, other than the marketing reasons.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do take notes on things like characters, especially like with science fiction, you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of characters. And we were talking about continuity. So I have to make sure each of these characters is written down. I need to have a profession and a family for all of them, just in case somebody gets referenced to. So that way all the references make sense. So that,
Yeah.
and I'm terrible at naming things. That's my biggest weakness as a writer. And I've heard that it's not uncommon. I've heard that writers will actually go to cemeteries for names for ideas and stuff. But whether it's a character or an item or a city, I am horrible at naming things. That takes me forever to just like decide what am I going to call this? Or like I have 5 characters named John. I need to change that because everybody can't have the same name. That's my biggest weakness, I would say, coming up with names.
Yeah. Yeah. That it depends on what your issues are, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's yours, and the other authors have their own.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Of course, if you have all characters have the same name, you can't put them apart in your
Yeah,
mind.
exactly. It kind of hurts the creativity a little bit if everybody's name is the same.
Yeah, and you can't keep them apart either. So, as the
Yeah.
author, so it's hard if they all have the same name. Yeah, or the places all have the same name, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough.
But I
Especially,
mean, even in the on this world, right, that we're living in right now, there's so many places that have the same name, and
right.
so you always have to define where in the world, right? Because like Great Britain and the U.S. have plenty of names that are the same, right? Plymouth
Yeah,
will be
exactly.
the same in the there's Plymouth in England, there's Plymouth in America. Who's to know which is which if you don't add something to it? So it gets complicated, but in a book like you're writing, I guess you can make it more simple by really giving them different names.
Yeah, and when you're dealing with science fiction, I've got to name all these planets. Every planet has a bunch of cities. There's like dozens of characters, and that'll take me forever. That'll take me longer than writing the book. I'll leave blanks as I'm writing, and I'll highlight the blanks, name this person, or something like that. So that way, when I'm done and I go through the editing, all right, let me figure out what I'm going to name this thing.
So you probably write a number or something.
Yeah, I make sure I highlight it because I almost made that mistake once where I was going to send in the manuscript, but I forgot to make all those corrections. So the manuscript was complete except for blank spaces where every name should have been. That would have been embarrassing.
Yeah, that is a problem, yeah, if you don't have that figured out. Yeah, because like you could say city number one on planet so and so,
Yeah,
and then so that you can then with the auto correction or with the correction program you could replace that with what you've come up with, right?
yeah. The biggest mistake I made, this was when I submit choice, the second book in Wolves and Ravens. I was editing it and I had 2 chapter 4s. I had the normal chapter 4, and then the next chapter 4 was a chapter from a completely other book that somehow my mind got mixed up, and I'm writing it, and I went right into writing Eternal Nights within the same manuscript. So what the hell did what the hell just happened? So it was a mess. That happens to me sometimes because there's too much at once.
Yeah, yeah, I can get that. So, but at least it wasn't 2 chapter 4s of the same book.
Yeah,
So you could recognize the difference in style, right?
yeah,
Because that would have been another option, right? But then you'd have to change the number of the chapter if it were the same book.
right.
So, but you'd have to know which one goes where, right? one
Exactly.
comes first and which
Yeah.
one comes afterward. So yeah, there's always issues. So I I think it's time to start wrapping up.
Okay. Yeah.
So is there any question I didn't ask you would like to share something about?
No, I can't think of any.
Okay. Is there anything you would like to share with the audience?
Just my website is www.richardspiegel.com. Very simple. The publisher went all out. It's a beautiful website. Each book has a movie trailer. There's lots of other videos and content on there, so it's a great website. My Instagram is at richardspiegel.book at Richard Spiegel Books. So I like to throw that out there too. And the next book will maybe May. It usually takes them about 2 months. So the newest book will be out in May of this year.
Sounds good to me. So I'd like to thank you once more for joining me on this podcast, exploring these very deep issues that we human beings and in your series also the heavenly beings and the other higher beings have, or lower beings if you want to see it that way. And even the beings in the science fictions have also so many issues that we can face in our lives. So thank you for that. And please let people know about the podcast so they can find it, so they can listen to the various episodes, because there's a lot of them out there at this point.
Cool, sure.
And please subscribe to the podcast. Let everyone who wants to, please subscribe. Let people know about it. And if you want to be a guest, please reach out to me so that you can become a guest on the podcast. And if you know someone you would like to hear on this podcast, you can also let them know about it and let them reach out to me. So blessings to you all, and till next time.
All right. Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. Thank you.